Hi, this is Natu, a guy who's way too old and way too long involved in this game, and you're watching Thorin's YouTube channel.
Plus Pro Series Madrid marked the end of an era in many respects. Obviously, Astralis' legendary 31-0 offline streak on Nuke was ended by ENCE in the grand final in Map 1. Astralis' era, I actually think after this event, can be said to have ended. And if you look at it, it's not even just this event that ends it. Actually, with Glaive's tweet announcing the events that they have coming up in the next few months, scheduling alone has basically ended the era of Astralis. And once we get to the end of this video, and I've outlined everything, you'll see that essentially no one took Astralis' era from them. No one beat them. No one ousted them. They didn't fail at the tournaments. They weren't incapable of doing it. They literally just sat back, chilled at some fun events in front of crowds, playing best of ones, laughed and joked, did some interviews on couches, and just let their era drift away. What they did up until the major, they've accomplished. No one can ever take that from them. They're the greatest CSGO team of all time for my money. I actually think now, the more I've spent time reflecting, I think they're probably the greatest Counter-Strike team ever. I think what they've done probably supersedes what Na'Vi and MTW and SK Gaming and Fnatic did in the days of 1.6. I think they've gone above and beyond that. So they are probably the greatest of all time. But the true tragedy of their greatness and of this era will be that it could have kept going, is that they could have done more. And maybe they wouldn't have. Maybe they would have lost these tournaments. Maybe they would have been overstrained. Maybe they needed time off. This could all be the case. But the what if will always linger, and it will always haunt some of us. I don't know if it'll haunt the Astralis players. Maybe they don't mind. That's not really my concern. I care about history, not the feelings of people who happen to win Counter-Strike tournaments. So what is an era? That's the first thing we have to establish before we can discuss this topic, because I've heard a lot of people doing mental gymnastics to explain that, well, you know, Astralis is still number one. Well, no one's taken the era from them. It's no one else's era, right? An era is a period of significant dominance over the scene. So it's not simply about being number one. There have been many world number ones who didn't have an era. The majority of world number ones didn't have an era. It's not simply about winning a major. There are teams that didn't win majors that had eras. NIP, their era wasn't when they won a major. The point is, winning a major is obviously the biggest tournament you can win. Therefore, it's one of the best ways to help establish an era. But winning a major isn't alone enough. I mean, Gambit was nowhere near to an era, right? Just for winning that PGL Krakow major. Meanwhile, SK Gaming, that the same time period of that major, summer of 2017, they were in position to potentially have an era if they'd have won that tournament and maybe one or two more. You can see it's not just about majors. It's about being not only the number one team, potentially winning the major. It's about being dominant. It's about having a set period of time where this period of time is all about you. Even if you lose, you losing is a bigger storyline actually than one of your rivals winning or one of your underdogs winning. Just like Na'Vi winning ESL 1 Cologne was less about Na'Vi than it was about, wow, Astralis lost to them in the semi-finals. DreamHack Masters Stockholm. North winning was incredible, but it was less about North winning than, holy fuck, they beat Astralis twice? They took the title from them? That's because one of the factors Astralis had that also has ended now with this loss was once they won DreamHack Masters Marseille, the event back in 2018, from which point most people inside, not in the world rankings, considered them the best team in the world, the team to beat. From that period until Blast Pro Series Madrid yesterday, they had never failed to bounce back from a loss. So if they lost at IEM Sydney, they bounced right back and won EPL. If they lost at ESL 1 Cologne, then they bounced right back afterwards and they won a different tournament. If they lost, you see the point here. Every time they lost, they won the very next tournament, which is an insane feat. I think that might be, at the end, the best feat they ever accomplished, because that is mind-boggling. Teams like Fnatic can't brag that. SKM can't brag that. NiP can. Nobody can. That is actually the most insane run that they were having. Better than the streaks on Nuke or Inferno, or better than even the number of finals they were in. I think that might be the most telling sign of their dominance. Well, that's over as well, because thanks to them making the last three real events they played, not counting the group stage of EPL, Blast Pro Series events, they would have had to have won 2 out of 3, and they only won 1 out of 3. They lost 2 in a row, so that whole thing of bouncing back from event losses is over. I mean, yes, at an event that's not very meaningful, sure, you could say this event doesn't matter, but if this event doesn't matter, skip the rest of the video. You just made the point for me that their era ended by them just not being active, just not playing. So the key point to establish here is you don't just get an era as a static label that is applied to you, which other people have to do something to stop you having. Like someone else has to become number 1. Someone else has to win the major. No, you just lose your major based on what you did. So if you don't play and win enough tournaments, you lose your major. If you don't get enough good results overall, you lose your major. If you are beaten too many times by someone else and they take the titles, you lose your major, but you had to be involved. If you don't attend events, you lose. I keep saying major, I mean era, don't I? If you don't attend events, you lose your era. If you don't maintain number 1 status, you're going to lose your era. These are factors that are at play here for Astralis. So let's look at Astralis in 2019, and we can divide it into 2 sections to make this point. So they've played now in a total of 5 LAN events, and they've also played the group stage, which is on LAN now, of EPL. So they played iBuyPower Masters in just past the middle point of January. They finished second there, losing Team Liquid in the final. They played the IM Katowice Major, which took place over late February into early March. They won the major, massive performance. Since the major, on the latter part of March, they played Blast Pro Series Sao Paulo, which they won, beating Team Liquid in the final. In the middle, almost, of April, they played Blast Pro Series Miami. They finished in 5th place there. In 2 weeks later, roughly, just under that, they played the EPL group, not against good teams. And then they just now played Blast Pro Series Madrid, where they finished 2nd. So since the major, they've won a Blast, they come 2nd at a Blast, they finished 5th at a Blast, and they won a group in EPL. That's it. That's all they've done in that time period. Now, here's the key point that spurred me to think about this topic and caused this realization, which is this tweet from Glaive today, where he tried to sort of meme on the fact that people are mad that Astralis hasn't been at top tournaments by pointing out that they're coming to a whole bunch of tournaments that have nothing to do with Blast Pro Series or Refresh. So he says, a lot of people have been asking about our upcoming events. I understand that you want us to play every Blast event. A little bit of a joke there, wink and a nudge. Obviously, most people don't. That's the joke. But I'm sad to tell you that our last 3 tournaments before the summer break is ECS Finals, ESL Pro League Finals, and ESL 1 Cologne. I hope it's okay. Well, Glaive, I'll give you the spoiler. It's not okay. I mean, it is. It's fine if you want to take time off. It's fine if you want to play those events. Maybe you win those events and you stay number 1 and you establish a new era. That's cool. It's not okay in terms of your era, in terms of your CSGO history, though. Because I looked this up. As he says there, the first event they will play that isn't a Blast event is ECS Finals. Now, the ECS Season 7 Finals begin on the 6th of June. So on that day, the 6th of June, I personally use a 3-month hard time window to determine world rankings. So on the 6th of June, 3 months prior, the window will extend to the 6th of March. So no results from before the 6th of March will count. So remember, the major ended on the 3rd of March. So that means only tournaments since the major will count for Astralis during the time period once they begin ECS Season 7 Finals, the next big non-Blast/Refresh event they're trying to win. So at that point in time, they will have just played 3 Blast Pro Series and an EPL group. Now, I don't consider Blast Pro Series big, meaningful international tournaments. I don't think they're that big a deal. I don't think FaZe winning one, for example, meant that FaZe, all their problems are behind them, like they're a world-class team again, they're truly like going to contend for the next major. No, FaZe is in big, big trouble. ENCE winning this one, yeah, it was fucking nice to see them beat Astralis in Best League. That was big-time play. And what they've done elsewhere has certainly been a high level of form to make them an elite team now. But are they number 1 after winning this? Of course not. Are they a champion team after this? I'd like to see them win a big international title first. I'd like to see them have to do more than win 1 best of 3 over a top team. So you look at it, Blast Pro Series events don't really even count for that much. But all they've done is play 3 Blast and an EPL group. So over that time period, they've played 15 best of 1s, 2 best of 3 series, 1 of which they lost, and they played an EPL group. And in the EPL group, they played best of 3s against Hellraisers, not a good team. Big, currently a very flawed team, but at least they're on a little bit of an uptick, still not a top 5 team at all. And X3D Max, I bet most of you watching this video couldn't even mention the lineup of that team. And those, even though they're best of 3 on LAN, are against bad teams and is just the group phase. No playoff experience whatsoever. So basically, over that time period, the guys from Astralis played 2 vaguely meaningful best of 3 series, and even then in tournaments that aren't considered top tournaments. Now, the context and circumstances of what could have happened over that time period are what is essential to determining why Astralis has now sacrificed their era, because they skipped Star Series Season 7, which came not long after the major. Let me see, was that after Blast? Yes, it had Blast Sao Paulo, and then you had Star Series Season 7, which Astralis chose to skip. It was won by Na'Vi, a rival of Astralis's, and that tournament required a minimum of 7 best of 3 or best of 5 series to be won to win the tournament. Na'Vi actually had to play more than that, but you had to win a minimum of 7 best of 3 or best of 5 series, because obviously the finals are best of 5. They skipped IEM Sydney, won by Team Liquid, a rival of theirs. If your rivals are winning events and you're not even attending events, you're going to have a hard time being number 1 and having a dominant era, aren't you? So it was won by Team Liquid, a rival of theirs. A tournament that requires a minimum of 4 best of 3/best of 5 series to be won. Remember, Blast requires 1. And you could obviously take more than that if you don't skip straight to the semis, if you go to the lower bracket, etc. They skipped, or are skipping, DreamHack Masters Dallas, which is coming up. Hasn't been played yet, but would fall within the 3-month time span. It's a top title, has a number of their rivals in attendance. Format isn't announced yet, but at a minimum, based on what I can see, you're going to have to win a minimum of 2 best of 3. I would imagine at least 3, potentially more. So again, more than Blast Pro Series, it's a much more prestigious event. It'll have a much better field. So there are 3 events they've skipped that their rivals collectively attended and won. So it's as if, in terms of the overall global scale of domination, Astralis essentially, by not attending, it's as if they got a last place finish at those events. Therefore, they're not dominant anymore. They're not the best team. Because if they'd attended those events, let's be real, this team is so good, at least they were until they started skipping events and got ring rust, that they were getting at worst semi-finals. As realistically, I think they would have made the finals of at least 2 or 3 of these events. I think they probably would have won at least 1 or 2 titles. Maybe they would have won all the titles and maintained their dominance completely. Instead, there's the thing, if they attended other big events, it wouldn't be a problem. But because they chose to attend Blast instead, well, first of all, the Blast events don't count on the same level as any of those tournaments. Secondly, they didn't even win all 3 of the Blast events. Remember everyone saying, yeah, but as long as they win the Blast events, it'll still be fine. They'll still be number 1. They'll be considered either world ranking number 1 or in my heart number 1. Well, first of all, fuck you in your heart ranking. That's not the way it works in terms of your era. It's not like, well, I felt like in my heart they would have won if they'd attended that event. They didn't attend and let their rival attend and win. Therefore, somehow the rival doesn't get the points for that, but they still in my heart get them. No, fuck your heart. Fuck your idea of eras. That ain't the way it works. So, first of all, don't ever take for granted that team will win 3 LAN events. You know how fucking hard that is in Counter-Strike. Even an event like Blast Pro Series. Actually, Blast Pro Series, on one weird level, is harder to win because it's a fucking shit format. That actually also makes it easier to win by definition because it's a shit format. Hence, you've had teams like FaZe win that don't win other big events. But okay, and they didn't even win those. They won 1 of those events. And those events have varying fields, where the people who organise the event decide who play at the fucking event. And therefore, you don't always get all the best teams at those events. How many of their events had Astralis, ENCE, Team Liquid, Na'Vi, the team that most people would consider those the top 4 teams in the world? How many Blast Pro Series events had those 4 teams? Oh, what's that? ENCE isn't a contracted team, so they're not at them all. Not my fucking fault, is it, you idiot? You're the idiots trying to argue. So instead, they chose to attend Blast. Now, if a rival, if Team Liquid, jokes on that, they don't get to go to all these Blast events. If ENCE, they don't even get invited to most of these. They don't have a contract with Refresh. What about if Na'Vi then? Oh wait, Na'Vi wasn't at all 3. But let's say one of their rivals had been at all 3 of the Blast events, and one of their rivals had won all 3 Blast events. Would that have made their rival world number 1? Would that have given their rival an era? Would that have been an appropriate start to an era for one of their rivals? Of course it wouldn't. Therefore, if it wouldn't apply like that to their rivals, why the fuck would it apply like that to Astralis? Why would, even if they'd won these 3 events, why would that be their era continuing? For me, they could have maybe made a tenuous case that if they won all 3 of the Blast events, and then immediately won ECS, and maybe won EPL as well, then maybe they could have said, see, our era did kind of continue. They actually blew their era just at Blast, and quite frankly, it was tenuous if even the Blast ones should have counted. So in the same way it wouldn't count for someone else, it doesn't count for Astralis. And in fact, the fact that they didn't make it makes it even fucking worse. So if we want to go, because people might go, yeah, but Thorin, Na'Vi has skipped a lot of events. Team Liquid is skipping ESL Cologne, Thorin, and skipped Star Series. Why are they not allowed to skip events? Right. Are you really that dense you can't understand that those are not the world #1 team, they are not the team with an era, and they have not got a massive historical context riding on their back, waiting to end as soon as they stop being dominant, you fucking pleb. If that's literally the equivalent of the little kid who goes, yeah, but I just did it because Jimmy and Billy were doing it as well. I didn't know it was naughty. And then the mum goes, would you jump off a cliff if Billy and Jimmy did as well? You're that kid. Like, we're talking about, like, they fucking blown their era. And you're like, yeah, but Na'Vi blew their non-existent era and Team Liquid didn't go to an event, so it doesn't... how does this work again? Does that mean that Astralis get to keep an era? 2 + 4 = I should have stayed at school. No, it doesn't make sense. Let's look at the last 3 months by these top teams, right? So, Astralis' key rivals for the top... I'd say at the moment, most people would say it's Team Liquid, Na'Vi, and ENCE. So, okay, Team Liquid, over the last 3 months... They went to Blast Pro Series Sao Paulo, finished second. They went to Blast Pro Series Miami, finished second. And they won IEM Sydney, first place. So they won a meaningful international tournament. They finished second at 2 Blast Pro Series. That's actually a better run of form in the 3 months that will window that will start at ECS than Astralis have had. So they have a better run of form than Astralis does. How can Astralis be the dominant team with an era? Na'Vi... 1 Star Series Season 7, already a way better event than any event Astralis has attended or won in the 3 months the window will be set by the time ECS Season 7 starts, and they finished 4th at Blast Miami. So okay, probably not an overall better resume collectively than Astralis, but in terms of the best event it is. Actually, I'd say it is, but anyway. ENCE finished 3rd at Blast Sao Paulo, top 8 at Star Series Season 7, and 1 Blast Madrid, so themselves a better resume than Astralis. They didn't win a big international tournament outside of Blast events, but Na'Vi did, Team Liquid did. So if your rivals are winning meaningful international tournaments, attending meaningful international tournaments, even performing as well at the shitty, stupid side Blast circuit as you are, how are you the dominant team? How are you #1? How is this an era still? Why would this be considered a special period of dominance? No, that ended with the major, mate. Because anyone trying to downplay that angle of like skipping events means the others are all the same. Okay, Team Liquid attended IEM Sydney. Astralis didn't, and they're going to be at CS Summit, not a big event, but still another event, and they're going to be at DreamHack Masters Dallas, so there's 2 meaningful events they're attending in the 3-month span that nobody from Astralis attended. ENCE attended Star Series already, they're also going to be at CS Summit, and they're going to DreamHack Dallas. 2 big international tournaments, none for Astralis in that time period. Na'Vi attended Star Series 7, Astralis didn't, Na'Vi attended at least 1 event, even if they're skipping DreamHack Dallas. Team Liquid can skip ESL 1 Cologne, they've attended a whole bunch of other events. So over the whole 3-month time period I'm talking about, there will have been 6 big events. I'm not counting CS. Well, I guess we can count CS Summit as well, right? Let me think. Should we count DreamHack Dallas as well? Wouldn't that be like 8 events there'll have been? Let me think. How would this matter? 7. I think we should count DreamHack. I'll make it 7. There'll have been 7 events. Astralis won one of them, a Blast, one of the least meaningful. Na'Vi won one of them, Star Series, arguably the best so far. Team Liquid won one, not the greatest field, but it's not their fault people didn't attend, big event. Team Liquid won one, FaZe won one, another Blast, ENCE won one, another Blast. So there've been 6 events. CS Summit hasn't happened yet, but someone's going to win that. But to be fair, you shouldn't have to attend that, but then again, you shouldn't have to attend Blast. But let's add it for the moment. So 7 events. Astralis isn't going to be at Summit. So of the 7, Astralis have won 1 of the 7 that potentially they could have attended. 1 out of 7, and it was a small Blast event where they won a best of 3 and some best of 5, best of 1s. They won 1 out of 7 events over the 3-month time period. And that's their era. This is their dominant period. They're #1 for you. If they're #1, they're #1 by the most tenuous metric ever. And they're certainly not a dominant team. So, quite frankly, this is the part of the video that's a eulogy for the Astralis era. It's the only era in the history of CSGO that was ended willingly by the team themselves. Go look at Nip's era. They're still fucking going ham after their era. Fnatic, they're still attending seemingly every event. They're trying their hardest. They're getting top 4s, they're getting finals, but they just can't win. You go look at SK. SK was still semis, finals. They attended a lot of tournaments before they even made the FNX change. And they gambled their legacy. They weren't able to continue their legacy, but they at least put it on the line, right? They died in battle, losing their legacy. They didn't just give the legacy to someone else. They didn't just give up their era. Now, when I say gamble your legacy, gamble your era, I'm not talking about we wipe out all the past majors and tournaments. Who the fuck would suggest that? Only a cretin. I'm saying that you can't continue it. Yes, it's the greatest era. It could have been even greater. That's the worst thing about this. That's why it's not okay, Glaive. Because you had a chance to do something insane. You've already done the best thing ever in the history of Counter-Strike. Your era, your feat in doing so is the best ever. And you know what? You had a chance to do more. You had a chance to go 3 majors back to back to back covering your era. Something none of the others did. Not Fnatic, not NIP didn't even win 2 majors. Not SK who won 2 majors. Fnatic and SK won back-to-back majors. They could never make it 3 in a row. You could have made it 2 whole years of domination. Something even NIP didn't come close to doing. You could have set an impossible standard for the modern day with this thing where you made the finals practically every event, where you win 1 out of every 2 events that are held. This is greatness on a level we may never see again, even from this Astralis core. And you gave all of that up for what? What did it cost? Everything. Your era is over. So you had some time off. Cool. You supported a shit event from your owner's other company, which was supposed to believe had nothing to do with you, that you just willingly gave up. If so, more fool you. You sent a message to the rest of the industry that you want more time off. Okay, great. The end consequence is still the same. You lost your era. So if Astralis want to say, we wanted to take time off, we didn't want to attend as many events, you know what, we burned out after our era. Fine. Then accept the consequences, understand there's a price to everything, and you paid that price. You traded the end of your era and the continuation of your era for this rest, to send a message to people, to support your owner's other company. You did all that stuff. So was it worth it? If it was, then have at it. Why are you mad at me? Have a great life. Enjoy it. You know what? You might still be the best team. Recent results would suggest not really. You haven't proved it in the last few months. You look worse now than you did at any point in time during your era, and certainly than when you were at the major. With that said, if you win ECS and EPL and ESL1 Cologne and you win the next major, maybe you can start a new era. Maybe you'll have an amazing second era that just had a brief break between it and goes on. But let's be real, you did do a break. You did take time off. You did attend events that you might think are meaningful, but to purists are utterly meaningless. Not entirely, that's hyperbole, but they're meaningless in the context of the events that we count when we're talking about being the greatest. Now, all events count, but they don't count the same way. They're not equal. So anyone said, yeah, but Astralis has attended the same number of events in the year. No, because we're talking about attending blast events over real events. If they'd attended the other events, that wouldn't be a problem. So they might yet start a new era, but they've got all the heavy lifting to do for that because there's nothing carrying over from before. This video was kindly supported by Wendelful, Butt Pounder 420, Dean Tanglis, Andreas, Snazore Westerlund, JDubs, Chi Mao, Daniel Olivar, OllieJ, Tobias Bernasconi, NateDOhDoubleG, Alexander Rao, and a special thanks go out to Jerky's Minion, weixz, don't know how to say that, it's like a Chinese name, and Max Laine. Do you want to suggest a topic or a guest for some of my upcoming content? It's going to be a big feature in the next few months for me. Well, my Patreon, that's a feature. Do you want to ask me a question in my monthly AMA? Would you like teasers for my upcoming content? Find out who the next guests are. Maybe you want to take part in that monthly donator discussion with me. Well, if you want any of the above perks, put your money where your mouth is. Support me via the Patreon link below and join the Scrilluminati today.